Who won the war?
First of all, who are you and what are you known for?
My name's Scott Shaw. I'm a cartoonist. I've worked on comic books for 40 years. I started out doing underground comics, and I guess I'm best known for working on the Flintstones and Sonic the Hedgehog and the Simpsons, and I co-created a comic called Captain Carrot and His Amazing Zoo Crew for DC. So I work on a lot of other people's characters, and then I work on my own characters.
How'd you get into comics?
Oh, I think like most cartoonists, I was kind of born with a cartoonist gene. So it's almost like you knew you wanted to be a cartoonist from the minute you could really draw. And I got into comics because I grew up in San Diego, and there was a lot of activity with fans. In fact, I went to high school with other guys that wound up getting into comics later too. And we met a guy that wanted to publish our stuff. He was an old timer named Ken Kruger. And he was doing underground comics and porno comics and all kinds of stuff. But he published my first thing in a comic called Gory Stories Quarterly.
And how old were you?
I was, I think, 17. And, you know, underground comics, I just loved them. And it was a perfect way to get in. And from that point, I wound up working for Hanna-Barbera on comics that Marvel published of the Flintstones and Yogi Bear and all that sort of thing. And that segued into doing more and more comics. I was also one of the kids that helped start the San Diego Con. And I had met guys like Jack Kirby and people like that. So it seemed like I was kind of in the right place at the right time. And it just seemed like kind of a natural progression somehow. And I've done a lot of work in animation and advertising and toy design and all that stuff, but I always come back to comics. Right now, I'm mainly doing comics again. So, you know, I love doing comics. I love reading comics. I've got more comics than any human should own. Uh-oh. Sorry. He's got a cricket in his pants.
Yeah.
That impresses the girls.
And cricket is a generous.
Yes.
Forget it. Okay, sorry. Let's continue.
I've got a gnat in my hand.
Thank you.
That was the sound of you rubbing your legs together.
So my legs are crossed. So how you say you love comics and stuff? How did you get into these other forms of art?
Well, working in comics, they saw my work at Hanna-Barbera and asked me to come in and work in-house on a Flintstones cartoon, because the Flintstones came out in 1960, and I had just turned 9. And being nuts for dinosaurs, and nuts for Hanna-Barbera cartoons from Rough and Ready, about the first 3 or 4 years of Hanna-Barbera Studios was stuff I just loved, when it was actually hip and funny. And that led to, I wound up as a producer and director of Saturday morning shows, and that led to me getting into advertising, and I worked as an ad agency art director for many years. And then, of course, the fact that I'm a toy collector as well. A friend saw on one of the Flintstones DVDs that they had me talking about the Flintstones on. They had just signed a deal to do action figures of all the Hanna-Barbera characters, so they called me up, and so I got into toy design. So I've done everything from, children's placemats to color in restaurants to illustrations for Skin magazines. And my darkest hour when they said, will give you $25 for anything that features a woman's breasts. And I said, you know, I was living in Mark Evanier's extra bedroom because my wife had thrown me out. I said, you know, I think I'll cross that line here and exploit women for the sake of living, being able to get my own apartment again. So, you know, when you're a cartoonist, you do whatever. The fact that I write most of my own material is kind of the part I enjoy more than anything, because, you know, secretly trying to corrupt the kids, putting my own agenda in, and, you know, make it funny but subversive. That's what I got from J. Ward cartoons and stuff like that. So,
What cartoons has he done?
Rocky and Bullwinkle, George of the Jungle, Hop and Hooper, W. Do-Right. The funny stuff. The funny, cheap cartoons for TV. When I was growing up, that was like, I'd seen every Bugs Bunny cartoon, every Tom and Jerry, every Popeye 10 times each. So it was like the cavalry arrived as far as I was concerned.
And you did animation too. Tell us about some animation.
I started out working on a new Flintstones show in animation back in 1978, and I wound up working on characters like the Smurfs, and I won a number of awards for working on Muppet Babies.
What awards?
Emmys. And then I did a lot of different things. I wound up producing and directing Martin Short series starring Ed Grimley, making himself as Ed Grimley, and John Candy show, Candy. I kind of became the SCTV cartoon guy. I worked with Dave Thomas on Mackenzie Brothers, and so when I worked on Scooby-Doo, I worked on, I hate to say it, a little bit of Disney stuff. I'm not a big Disney fan, but you know, at this point in my career, I'm just glad to still be working and, you know, still seem to be able to pay the mortgage just barely. I'm good. I'll be 60 this year, so I think the one thing that's been in my favor is that most people that want to draw comics and like drawing comics, they want to draw superheroes or vampires or women with large breasts or whatever. I never was interested in any of that. I wanted to draw funny stuff. And I think by never being in fashion, my stuff never went out of fashion. Really, it's true. It's a much smaller area of competition.
And so you're doing funny comics right now.
Allegedly, you know, I hope they're funny.
That's open to debate, sir.
Yeah. No, I'm just finishing a Bart Simpson story, and I do a comic online called Now It Can Be Told, which is all autobiographical stuff about me. And I do a comic called The Adventures of Captain Rochester, which is like an advertising device for a company that makes semiconductors for computers. And a little bit of everything.
Are these, when you look at these kinds of projects, do they feel kind of like work for hire? You know what I mean? Versus personal.
They are. The ones that I do definitely are work for hire, but you know, I mean, I enjoy The Simpsons, and I actually probably like writing them better than drawing them. But you know, Matt's an old friend of mine, and you know, it's a good show. I don't feel like a sellout working on it. Bongo probably treats its creators better than most of the other companies out there. They pay a higher rate. It's a buyout, so they own the art, they own everything, but you get paid 2 or 3 times what you get paid up front. You know, who knows if you're going to be around to sell the art anyway? So let Matt worry about that. And the Captain Rochester thing is very explicitly an advertisement. So coming from 10 years working in advertising, that's fine. You know, I like those kind of comics. I collect those comics. I like that sort of stuff myself. I think comics are kind of the best kind of low-tech way to spread information, or spread a point of view, or propaganda, whatever. So, I don't have a thing against work for hire art. I just don't want to do all of it, because then I I don't feel like I'm doing anything that I'm just kind of doing for myself. So that's why I do that online comics. So at least I've always got something out there that I feel is mine.
How does it weigh the stuff you love versus and you know, maybe you enjoy it either way and can find enjoyment either way, but you know, how do you decide when you're going to do the work for hire and when you're going to do the personal?
When you're a freelancer, you essentially, the closest thing to job security is you take on everything that's offered to you and then figure out how you're going to get it done. Mm-hmm. It's like I told a bunch of kids once at an art college, I said it's like being in school for the rest of your life. I told them that at a party, and the party broke up because I got them so depressed realizing what it was like out at Art Center. It was like they just like walked away like they, one of those movies where everybody sees how they're going to die. It's some final destination. That's what it was like. It was like I just revealed, you're going to die at a roller coaster. They're going to find you dead on your drawing board. You're going to slit your wrist because you missed so many deadlines you couldn't get hired. This wasn't the kind of information you wanted. This is going to be like The Ring now. When people see this thing, they're going to being a cartoonist sucks.
Hey, you guys have the convention coming up in June.
Well, that's
Yeah, I'll
my
make a couple for
intention with this project. So.
Good. You'll be thinning the herd Darwinian style. I think that's a very good thing to do.
So you love comics and you love animation, and you've done a little of both. But you said it's comics you love.
I love comics because it's one guy that's usually doing it, or two or three people at the most. Mm-hmm. So even on something that's a mainstream comic, you get guys that like Jack Kirby or Carl Barks or Gilbert Shelton that have a point of view when it comes across in the stories, and you know it's portable. You can read it on the can. You know that's the best part. Julie Schwartzman said, "A good comic takes exactly the amount of time that you have to take a good dump." This was like one of the big editors in the business. It's like admitting it's like. And it's true. That's the only time I have time to read comics anyway. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, you're a dad of two now. It's like, geez, you know, if the door's closed in the bathroom, they can't come in and bother me. And I read old issue of Strange Tales.
So, have you been doing any animation lately?
Not real recently. For the last couple of years, animation's changed. Now the big studios really want to hire young guys. They want to hire guys under 40. They want to hire guys who could do it paperless on a Cintiq. And I'd love to buy a Cintiq, but they're like what, $2,500 for one. I'm not going to buy a Cintiq, learn how to do it, and then have people say, "Well, we aren't going to hire you anyway because you're an old fart." You know, it's like I can't afford to take the time off to train myself. It's comics really, I think, is best by guys that are young, that may live in an apartment, have a couple of roommates, you know. But when you've got kids and a mortgage and all that, and unless you're the flavor of the month, you're not making a ton of money doing comics. You know, it's more like, hey, I went to a convention. I had a long line of people that wanted to meet me. I mean, I've met guys that actually said, I want to become a professional comic book artist, so when I go to a convention, I'll be treated well.
That's incentive.
Yeah, you know. And you know what, that's the thing, comics kind of attract that sort of thing. When you're a professional cartoonist, you're competing against people who would give their work away for free if they thought they could see it. You know, you're drawing a Wolverine in a Marvel comic. So that's kind of unusual in the first place.